Well, it was terrifying. I think that it really could have gone differently, and I'm so incredibly grateful for how things have changed.
Imagine being at the center of the biggest political scandal of the 1990s and walking away with barely enough to live comfortably. After she was thrown out of the White House, Monica Lewinsky was left to face a world that had completely blacklisted her and doors shut down by the powerful toes she had stepped on. Eventually, she packed her bags and disappeared for years, running away from something more shocking than the scandal that almost ruined her. Now, at 51, Monica Lewinsky's actual net worth will leave you stunned. The scandal that changed Monica Lewinsky's life. Did you know Monica Lewinsky was once rumored to have been offered millions in hush money? A reward for the dark secret she kept to protect the world's most powerful man. But the truth about what she actually earned in the years after becoming the most gossiped about woman in America and the amount she lost after would leave you stunned. Monica's life took a disastrous turn in June 1995 when she arrived in Washington, D.C. at the age of 21. She was a recent college graduate from a wealthy California family, eager to start her career. Through a family connection, she secured an unpaid internship in the office of White House Chief of Staff Leon Panetta. All she had to do was answer phones, file papers, and assist staff in the West Wing. But nothing could have prepared her for the drama that would unfold in the near future. A few months into the job, a government shutdown rocked the White House. With many senior staffers sent home, junior employees were temporarily reassigned to keep the White House running. Lewinsky found herself working directly in the West Wing, closer to the center of power than ever before. It was during this period that she first encountered President Bill Clinton. It initially began as friendly glances, casual conversation, and small moments of attention from the most powerful man in the country. But it soon developed into an intimate relationship that would eventually turn their lives upside down. In December 1995, Lewinsky was offered a paid position in the Office of Legislative Affairs. Her job involved handling correspondence from members of Congress and delivering mail directly to the president. This responsibility gave her frequent access to the Oval Office, where their encounters would mostly happen. Throughout 1996, they met in secret multiple times. They also exchanged gifts, such as neckties, books, and small personal tokens. Lewinsky would later confess that she became emotionally attached to the president and even fell in love with him. In April 1996, Deputy Chief of Staff Evelyn Lieberman made a decision that would change the course of events. She reassigned Lewinsky to the Pentagon, citing concerns about her behavior and lack of focus at work. The official reason for the transfer was inappropriate and immature behavior, but the message was clear. People at the White House had noticed something suspicious, and Lewinsky was being moved away from the president and from whatever was happening behind closed doors. At the Pentagon, Lewinsky met a woman named Linda Tripp. Tripp was a career civil servant who was older and far more experienced. The two became friendly, and eventually, Lewinsky confided in her. She shared intimate details about her relationship with the president, details she had told no one else. But what Lewinsky did not know was that Tripp was secretly recording their conversations. Every confession, every private detail, and every vulnerable moment was captured on tape. Tripp kept recording for months, building a collection of evidence that would later become central to one of the biggest political scandals in American history. By 1997, rumors about Clinton and a young White House intern had begun circulating among Washington insiders. Independent counsel Kenneth Starr, already investigating Clinton on other matters, became aware of Lewinsky's story through Tripp's recordings. The investigation expanded. Subpoenas were issued, witnesses were questioned, and through it all, Lewinsky had no idea that her private conversations had been betrayed. In January 1998, the story broke. The Drudge Report published allegations about the affair before any mainstream news outlet had confirmed them. Within days, the story was everywhere. Lewinsky was subpoenaed to testify. Her name, her face, and her private life became front-page news around the world. She was 24 years old, and suddenly, she was the most famous intern in human history. The scandal that followed would consume Washington, lead to the impeachment of a president, and define Monica Lewinsky's life for decades to come. But in those first days, as the world learned her name, she had no idea that the worst was still ahead. The devastating aftermath of the scandal. At just 24 years old, Monica Lewinsky became the most talked about woman on the planet, and what happened next nearly destroyed her. The public humiliation was overwhelming. Late-night comedians turned her name into a punchline. Tabloids printed stories filled with lies and half-truths, and mainstream news outlets analyzed every detail of her life, from her appearance to her character. She was mocked, judged, and condemned by millions of people who had never met her. Meanwhile, the White House worked extra hard to control the narrative. Clinton's allies painted her as an unstable, delusional young woman with an active imagination who had fabricated or exaggerated their relationship. The officials knew that if she could be discredited, the president might survive, and so Lewinsky was attacked by the most powerful political machine in the country, a machine with unlimited resources and no interest in protecting her. Outside her door, the paparazzi waited constantly. They followed her everywhere, to the grocery store, to the doctor, and to any attempt at a normal life. They asked weird questions, took pictures through windows, and made her a prisoner in her own existence. But beyond the physical harassment, Lewinsky became one of the first people to experience mass cyberbullying at scale. The internet was still young in 1998, but it was old enough to destroy someone. Strangers wrote terrible things about her. Her story was dissected in chat rooms and early websites. There was no escape, not even inside her own home. The weight of it all became too much for Lewinsky to bear, and she later admitted that she suffered from severe depression during this period. She had terrible thoughts, and there were moments when she could not imagine living through it all. She described herself as the most humiliated woman in the world, a phrase that captured the depth of her isolation. She was young, alone, and facing the combined fury of the media, the legal system, and the White House. There was also a very real chance she could go to prison. Years earlier, a woman named Paula Jones had filed an intimate harassment lawsuit against President Clinton, accusing him of misconduct while he was governor of Arkansas. That lawsuit was still moving forward. And as part of it, lawyers began asking Clinton detailed questions about his relationships with other women. In a bid to protect Clinton, Lewinsky signed a legal document in which she officially denied having an affair with the president. But that same affidavit, meant as an act of loyalty, now put her at serious legal risk because it could be seen as perjury or lying under oath. To make matters worse, Kenneth Starr, the independent counsel who was already investigating Clinton on other charges, had officially demanded that Lewinsky testify in court. And because her former friend Linda Tripp had secretly recorded their conversations, there was no way for Lewinsky to deny the affair once more. To avoid prosecution, Lewinsky accepted an immunity deal. She would testify truthfully in exchange for not being charged with perjury or obstruction of justice. As part of the deal, she handed over physical evidence, including a blue dress that would later become infamous. The dress contained DNA evidence that Lewinsky had been intimately involved with Clinton. When that evidence became public, any remaining doubt about the affair disappeared. The fallout was extremely severe for Bill Clinton. On January 26, 1998, he stood before cameras and delivered a line that history would never forget. He said, "I want to say one thing to the American people. I want you to listen to me. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky." However, this statement would eventually come back to haunt him, because in August of that year, he testified before a grand jury and admitted to an inappropriate intimate relationship. A few months later, the House of Representatives impeached Clinton on 2 charges, perjury and obstruction of justice. He became only the second president in American history to face impeachment. The following February, the Senate held a trial to determine whether he would be removed from office. But when the votes were counted, neither charge reached the 2/3 majority required for him to be convicted. Clinton remained president. But remaining in office was not the same anymore. His legacy was permanently scarred. His law license was suspended in Arkansas. He had to pay a fine, and the scandal became the defining chapter of his presidency. For Lewinsky, the legal resolution did not bring peace. She had survived the investigation, avoided prison, and told her story under oath. But the public humiliation and judgment were the hardest parts of the experience. She had become a symbol of scandal itself, of shame, of the tragedy that had happened to Bill Clinton. Eventually, the scandal died down, and Monica Lewinsky, at 25 years old, was left to pick up the pieces of a life that was no longer hers. She had no job, no privacy, and no future she could recognize. What she did have was an opportunity. The cameras were still watching, the world was still listening, and for the first time, people were willing to pay to hear her story. She experienced the biggest payday of her life, and it became the beginning of a financial journey that would take her higher than she ever expected and lower than anyone could imagine. Monica Lewinsky's tragic financial journey. When Monica Lewinsky sat down with Barbara Walters in March 1999, the world stopped to listen to what she had to say. More than 70 million viewers tuned in across the globe, making it one of the most watched television events in history. It was a chance for her to finally speak directly to the public that had judged her and to explain herself in her own words. It was also a financial lifeline because through various payments and licensing arrangements, she reportedly earned around $1 million from that single interview. It was the largest paycheck of her life. At 25 years old, after a year of legal battles and public humiliation, she finally had money in the bank. But the interview came with a cost. Every word she spoke was analyzed. Every expression was captured and replayed. She had sold her story, but she had also sold a piece of herself that she would spend years trying to get back. That same month, her book titled Monica's Story arrived in bookstores nationwide. It was written with Andrew Morton, the journalist who had chronicled Princess Diana's life and was meant to show the world why Monica had done the things she did. It would explain the young woman behind the scandal, her childhood, her dreams, and her version of what happened in the White House. Lewinsky reportedly received an advance of more than $500,000 from this deal. The book sold well at first, curiosity drove readers to stores, and for a few weeks, she was everywhere again. But public attention is a short-lived currency, and within months, the book faded from shelves. The royalties dried up, and what had seemed like a fortune became just another one-time payment, not the foundation for a lasting future. After a while, Lewinsky tried to build something more sustainable. She entered a business venture with a company called Craig, a deal reportedly worth a significant sum. The project was meant to capitalize on her fame, to turn her notoriety into a legitimate enterprise, but it never gained traction. The venture eventually failed and was shut down, but it didn't end there. In September 1999, Lewinsky launched a handbag line. The bags were sold at upscale stores like Henri Bendel in New York, with prices ranging from $150 to $218. For a moment, it seemed promising. The publicity generated interest and Lewinsky threw herself into the work, designing products and promoting the brand. But the handbag business, like so many celebrity ventures, could not survive beyond the initial curiosity. Within a few years, the line closed and another source of income vanished. By 2003, Lewinsky was willing to try almost anything. She hosted a Fox reality show called Mr. Personality, a dating competition where men wore masks and women chose based on personality alone. The show aired only 5 episodes before cancellation. It paid, but not enough to rebuild her reputation or establish a long-term career. Throughout the early 2000s, she made guest appearances on talk shows and television specials just to get by. But while these appearances brought short-term fees, a few $1,000s here and there, they were not enough to live on. By the mid-2000s, the public had largely moved on. The scandal was old news, and Lewinsky was no longer famous in the way that paid. For years, she disappeared from public view. She moved to London, earned a master's degree in social psychology from the London School of Economics, and tried to build a private life. The money from the interview fees, the book advance, and the failed business ventures was long gone. She was in her 30s, educated but still unemployable in any traditional sense. Finally, in 2015, Monica Lewinsky came back into the spotlight. She delivered a TED Talk titled The Price of Shame, a powerful speech about public humiliation, cyberbullying, and her own experience of being destroyed by the media. The talk went viral, amassing more than 20 million views. The TED Talk revived her public profile and established her as an anti-bullying activist. Speaking engagements followed, reportedly earning her around $60,000 per appearance. In recent years, Lewinsky has moved into production. She founded her own production company and signed a first-look deal with 20th Television. She served as a creative producer on Impeachment: American Crime Story in 2021, a series that dramatized the Clinton scandal. For the first time, she finally had some control over how her story was told. She also partnered with Beholder Productions to develop documentaries and shows focused on social justice and women's empowerment. But after everything that has happened, how is Monica Lewinsky currently doing, and what is she actually worth today? The answer at 51 is not what you might expect. Monica Lewinsky's current net worth. As of 2026, Monica Lewinsky's net worth is estimated to be between $1.5 and $2 million. It is a comfortable sum, enough to live on, enough to feel secure, but it is a far cry from the millions people assume she pocketed in the aftermath of the scandal. The money she made early on came in bursts. The Barbara Walters interview brought in around $1 million. The book advance added another $500,000. Together, they totaled more than she had ever seen, more than most people ever see. But they were one-time payments, not consistent income. Within a few years, that money was largely gone, spent on living expenses, legal fees, and the failed business ventures that followed. What happened next was a long silence where Lewinsky stepped back from the public eye for years, but stepping back meant stepping away from income. She reportedly turned down multiple opportunities, endorsements, television appearances, and anything that would put her back in the spotlight. She had fled. It was a choice that cost her millions, and she knew it, but it was also a choice that guaranteed her survival and protection from the world. In her 2014 essay titled "Shame and Survival," she described herself as patient zero, the first person whose global humiliation was driven by the internet. She understood, perhaps better than anyone, what it meant to be destroyed by public judgment. And she understood that the only way to survive was to reclaim her own story on her own terms. In recent years, her income has diversified. She still earns from her production company. She contributes essays to major publications, writes commentary, and develops projects focused on social justice and women's empowerment. She has also expanded into podcasting and television development, building a portfolio of work that reminds the world about her interests rather than her scandal. The question is, does Monica Lewinsky regret the money she lost, the endorsements she turned down, the deals she walked away from, and the years she spent in silence while others profited from her name? She has addressed this question directly. She has confessed that stepping back was never about money. It was simply about survival. It was about protecting herself from a world that had already taken too much. And in choosing survival over wealth, she gained something that money cannot buy: credibility, dignity, and a platform to influence the cultural conversations that matter to her. At 51, Monica Lewinsky is not a wealthy woman by Hollywood standards. She is not the millionaire the rumors imagine, but she is something perhaps more valuable. She is a woman who survived the worst the world could throw at her and built a life on her own terms. She is a woman who turned shame into purpose and humiliation into advocacy. Do you think Monica Lewinsky should return to the spotlight? How Monica Lewinsky reclaimed her power without chasing millions. And that may be the most shocking part of all. For decades, people assumed Monica Lewinsky had cashed in. In the public imagination, scandal automatically equals fortune. The narrative was simple: humiliation must have come with a massive payout. But the truth is far more complicated and far more human. The early checks did not build generational wealth. They built a breathing room, and breathing room for someone navigating global ridicule was priceless. What many fail to understand is that notoriety can close more doors than it opens. For years, Lewinsky struggled to find traditional employment. Companies feared backlash. Employers feared headlines. Her name carried too much noise. So instead of chasing quick money, she slowly rebuilt her credibility. Her return to public life in the mid-2000s was careful and intentional. Rather than reliving the scandal for entertainment value, she reframed herself as an advocate against cyberbullying and public shaming. Her TED Talk resonated globally, not because of gossip, but because of vulnerability. She spoke about humiliation as a public sport. She spoke about compassion as a cultural necessity. And suddenly, people were listening differently. That shift changed everything. Today, her financial stability comes from consistency, not spectacle. Producing projects, consulting on media portrayals, speaking engagements, writing, none of it is explosive income, but it is sustainable. It is steady. It is hers, and perhaps most importantly, it is not built on exploitation. There's something powerful about that choice. In a culture that rewards scandal cycles and viral outrage, Lewinsky chose longevity. She chose to transform her story into something constructive rather than profitable chaos. That decision may have limited her net worth, but it elevated her influence. At 51, she represents something rare in modern celebrity culture: reinvention without reinvention theater. She did not change her name. She did not disappear permanently. She did not attempt to rewrite history. Instead, she acknowledged it, learned from it, and stepped forward anyway. Financially, her net worth may surprise people because it feels modest compared to the myth, but emotionally and culturally, her value is far greater than the dollar figure attached to her name. She proved that survival is not weakness, that stepping away can be strategic, that dignity can be reclaimed slowly, deliberately, without spectacle. And maybe that is the true wealth story here. Not the millions she didn't make, but the life she rebuilt. Because at 51, Monica Lewinsky is no longer a punchline, no longer a tabloid headline frozen in time. She is a woman who endured the birth of internet shaming and lived to help reshape the conversation around it. And in a world still learning how to be kinder online, that might be worth more than any endorsement deal ever could. Tell us in the comment section below. Don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.